Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I'm here with a very special guest, Bill Cohen. Bill Cohen is a caregiver support group leader and speaker. He is also a member of the Alzheimer's Association Volunteer Advocate. He's a certified senior advisor and owner of Cohen Caregiving Support, LLC. Hi, Bill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. Yes, if you had told me 16, 17 years ago what was going to transpire and I'd be sitting here talking to you today and doing what I do, I'd say, you're crazy. You couldn't make up this scenario. So what was happening was, although I'm a Connecticut native, my mom was living in Biloxi, Mississippi, and she was there for about 30 years. But around 2003 or 4, she was showing some signs of something. We weren't sure exactly what, but it was some paranoia, confusion, forgetting things. She was in the caregiving role with my late stepfather, so she was stressed out, etc. And we were wondering, well, if he passed away or went into a care community, would she bounce back? Well, we never got that opportunity because what happened on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in New Orleans in August 2005? Hurricane Katrina. And their home was completely swept away. The trauma of seeing it gone, fully expecting to come back to it, just accelerated and exacerbated her condition. So I was working full time. I started doing the cross-country caregiving gigs, shall we say, while she was with other family members on the East Coast. And I started attending a support group. I started talking to a care community nearby and moved her out here. I think it was 2008. And she was in assisted living here for less than a year and 4 years in memory care. And she passed away 8.5 years ago at age 83. Now, as far as how I got to this point, I kept going to the support group. I became the facilitator. I'm still facilitating that same group 16 years later. But I got involved with the Walk to End Alzheimer's and fundraising and advocacy, et cetera. And I thought as I approached retirement from a completely unrelated job with the state of Oregon, that I would just do more volunteer work. I came across this concept of caregiving support consultant, and I started doing that 5 years ago. Pretty unpredictable, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about, Alzheimer's and dementia in general. It really can just throw your whole world upside down in a matter of weeks.
Yes.
So I can relate to that. So what exactly is a caregiving support consultant?
Thanks for asking that. So imagine if someone could help a family caregiver go through their journey with their person living with dementia, as I did with my mom, and help manage the care, manage the behaviors, practice self-care. I collaborate with all the different service providers, professionals to pull together the team, not just work separately, but put together a coordinated team. I'm a little like a navigator, but it helps. I provide them advice, support, resources, and help reduce their stress, help them sleep better at night. So they're not feeling so hopeless, exhausted, alone, etc. Because we've all felt that way. I understand. I needed somebody like me 10 to 15 years ago, but it didn't exist. So, and as you know, sometimes finding resources is very difficult. Back then, it was harder because it was basically the old thing about let your fingers do the walking through the yellow pages. Are you old enough to know that? Sorry, I'm teasing you.
I've used them a handful of times, but mostly was internet savvy.
Right, exactly. Now the problem is there's a lot of information and misinformation on the internet. And how do you know who to work with? Who's going to be a reliable, trustworthy resource, whether it's elder law or home care or a care community or an advisor to help you find that care community, that type of thing.
Yes. So what kinds of families do you, or what is like your ideal family that you would help?
Sure. I've actually helped families anywhere from 20-something because of a mother with early onset Alzheimer's, to 80-year-olds for either a spouse or an older sibling or a parent. But the primary group, and this is bears out in like my social media, like my Facebook community, is 35 to 65 adult children and about 80 to 85% women.
Okay.
Because this is a women's issue in terms of the caregivers, the care recipients, and the professionals.
Yes. Oftentimes a female family member usually does take on that role. Men tend to have a higher tendency to develop dementia earlier, and men tend to have a tendency to develop dementia slightly earlier, and it tends to impact them more than women. I don't know. Are you familiar with those statistics, or off the top of your head? You don't have to know the exact, but
Yes, again, more women, because women live longer. I mean,
yeah.
it isn't just related disease, as you know, it isn't just genetics. A lot of it has to do with environment and behaviors. But women too tend to fall into the caregiving, the nurturing role. And I've heard figures that it used to be more like 1 out of every 5 was male. Now it's more like 1 out of every 3. So it is, men are stepping up more into that role than they used to.
Yes, I do see a lot. I will see this working in an assisted living facility. There are a lot of residents that we had where they had sons who would come in and do the care. The daughters would too, but there was a few residents in particular that stand out. The sons would come in and do such an amazing job. And I would just love to end the stigma that it only has to be a female in the family to do it. I would love to see more male family members step up to that role. I think that they can do sometimes an even better job, especially if they're dealing with the dad. I just see it. I've seen some amazing sons come in and just take great care of their parents and really advocate. And I just don't want families to be like, well, you're the oldest sister or you're the only sister, so all of this burden should fall on you. Really, wouldn't you agree that this should be a family thing?
Yes, I've seen all kinds of family types, and there's actually some categories. I don't know if you've ever heard about the savvy caregiving classes, but they talk about, and we really do the same thing. I mean, after the hurricane, it was collaborative. We all pitched in to get them back on their feet, get them situated in North Carolina at first. Then it became more like tag team or sequential. Then it really fell apart. It not fell apart, but fell upon me more solitary. I was handling all the finances, the legal, et cetera, moved her out here. I mean, I was still getting support, but it was mostly from a distance. I just like to see less of the adversarial, or yes, as you said, you're the oldest or you're the best suited for this. There are so many things that family members can do, even if they're not doing the hands-on caregiving. They can do research, they can do ordering, they can handle the finances. There's a lot of things people would do. The most important thing is that everybody is on the same page in the best interest of the family member with dementia.
Yes, I actually love
Otherwise,
that.
it's not in anybody's best interest.
Yes, no, I actually love that, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. So would you like to tell us more about your support groups?
Sure. So again, one of the first things I did after she lost her home and I realized that she had some serious issues was starting to attend a support group with the Alzheimer's Association. And like I said, I became the facilitator, and I lead 2 others. One is for a nonprofit, which is just north of us in Vancouver, Washington, but I started first one south of the Columbia River here in Oregon, and it's a weekly support group. And then I do another one that is part of my Facebook community, which is Dementia Support Group for Caregivers with Bill Cohen, which is approaching almost 600 members with people from most of the states and most of the provinces and on 6 continents.
Oh, wow.
And,
That's amazing.
and while the others are moving back to in-person meetings, that one will continue to be virtually because I can talk to people anywhere.
Yes. Back to that, being able to consult with families anywhere. Is there a limitation with how far you can go with consulting with families? like geographically
Not
speaking?
really, other than probably, miles and time and complexity of travel or money or whatever. No, I help people all over the country. I'll give you a good example. There's a woman I know here in the Portland area whose family is in South Florida. Mom has dementia, and get on a Zoom call with the family, the two siblings and their aunt, and we discuss the issues and how to handle them. I've provided them resources and referrals to professionals that they didn't know about in their area by working with one of my professional contacts who I met a few years ago through LinkedIn. And so they've taken care of the legal and got her into better medical care and been looking at bringing in home care through some of those resources that I provided. And my main contact is still here in Portland, but we collaborate and coordinate with the family on both sides of the country.
That's incredible. And I'd imagine technology plays a big part in that, which
Absolutely.
can sometimes be like great. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes can be great.
And I very rarely meet the person with dementia. I mean, I have worked with them. I've even done a little companion work with, especially men in care homes that are alone. They don't have anybody to talk to. But my primary contact is with the caregivers, the family members, and I'll meet them wherever they're comfortable. Home, a restaurant, coffee shop, or virtually.
That's great. And that opens your service up, nationally to everybody. How about financially for families? How do you get paid for these services, and how do families get these services if they're struggling financially?
Good question. Like most professionals, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to do a lot of listening. I want to find out what if they had, in a perfect world or more perfect world, what can I check off their plate? What can I help ease their burden, help them have less stress, sleep better at night? I know you know about that one.
A little too well.
Yeah, wishful thinking, right? That what can I do to help them in those areas? And once we know what their main issues are, and it may be that they haven't taken care of the legal, that they haven't even got a durable power of attorney. So I might be referring them to a trusted elder law attorney. It might be, okay, how do I deal with the repeated questions type of thing, and give them suggestions for that. So it's a lot of, like I said, do a lot of listening, find out what their main needs are and how I can help them. Then I work mostly on a monthly basis with several hours of support. And it can be, again, advice, support, resources, referrals, just listening, because a couple of hours usually isn't going to be enough. Because as you know, dementia care is an ongoing, complicated, and as we just talked about, it may be a long distance issue. Because most families are not living together in the same area these days. Everybody's so spread apart.
Yes.
So it is, I can work on an hourly basis as well. I can work on sliding scale as well. I'm pretty flexible. And I am private pay. It is not an insurance thing, but then we don't have to try running it through any kind of insurance companies and, oh, we're going to cover this or that. So we just handle it that way.
Okay, great. And that's good for family members to know, because, they just, sometimes finances are really difficult for family members. You would understand there's complications with jobs and things like that. I know family members who've had to resign from their jobs caring for an elderly family member, or lose time off work, and that can be very difficult and stressful.
You want to talk about stress? Yeah, like I think I mentioned, I was working a full-time job, and I won't get into it too much, but a very unsatisfactory supervisor boss who did nothing except exacerbate my stress level, besides the caregiving for mom. So you can imagine where mine was. It was sky high blood pressure and stress level. Fortunately, after mom passed away, that person retired, and my stress level came down to perfect.
Yeah. Well, also the burden, and while it's like, it really hurts to lose a loved one, with dementia, I believe this 1000%, you grieve twice. With, I know personally with my grandmother and my grandfather, I grieved for them before they were gone because I knew it. I think I cried more the 2 weeks before she passed than I did after my grandmother passed, knowing it was coming. Her funeral, I think I cried once. The wake, I was fine. The night she passed, I cried for a couple minutes, but was really, really did all my pre-crying, my pre-grieving. I missed her as herself for so long that when she passed, it was almost a blessing to our family. It was that her pain is over. I don't mean to be like too preachy, beliefy wise, but I know, I know a lot of families with dementia, they grieve twice. Is that something you see with a lot of families that?
Absolutely, whether it's clients or in the support groups. It can be called either anticipatory grief or ambiguous grief for exactly the reasons that you're talking about. The person is still there. My mom was a early adopter in her 60s, back in the 80s, with a Mac. She was a whiz with finances. She was a master printmaker, artist, and teacher. So when she started to decline, it was so obvious because of that. So to see her like that, she was still there, but the person that she was no longer was. Fortunately, she was always a good recognition. She may not have remembered my name or the exact relationship. Sometimes she thought I was her husband. She might pat the bed and said, "Are you staying here tonight?" "No, Mom." But it was always like Maya Angelou, how do you make them feel, right? And it was always that. But when it got towards the end, as you were talking about, I had already done most of my grieving. I was there at her bedside for the last couple of weeks, and I was there that night she passed away. And I wasn't upset when that last labored, raspy breathing stopped. It was more like a big sigh. It's over.
Yeah.
She let go. She's no longer suffering. And as I've told some people, after that, yes, I needed a good trip. We were in Costa Rica 2 days later, a long planned trip, and that was very healing for me. But everything I've done since then, including my walk team, Team Sheila, in her name for the last 8 years, has been in her honor and memory. And that's why, again, I call what I do this my passion and my encore career. It's all because of her.
Yeah. No, and I completely get that. I'm seeing the same thing with my mom right now, who was my grandmother's primary caregiver. A lot of the burden was lifted when she put her in a long-term care facility, which was a difficult decision, especially to do during a pandemic. However, my grandmother wasn't safe at home. My mom had no choice. I supported her 100% in that decision and had her back with that. Just, but there was a sense of relief in that as the 24/7 part was lessened. And then there was a sense of relief when Mommy passed that, okay, Mom didn't have to, she had to move from the 24/7 caregiver to the advocacy caregiver role, which are very different roles.
Both important.
Both extremely important. But then in the advocacy role was stressful for her because she had never been there. She'd never had to do that. And she really couldn't be there much, especially, with the pandemic. She really couldn't see my grandmother. Maybe once a week we could get an appointment, or my mom could get an appointment. Everyone kind of tried to take turns to get in there as much as we could to visit her, but it was hard. It was,
And I heard that a lot from my clients and my support groups, about how isolated and scared and vulnerable everybody was feeling. And I really felt for them that either they couldn't go anywhere or they couldn't see their family members. Going back to one issue with the support groups is that I found from the very beginning that it was very, knowing you weren't alone. A lot of information, a lot of advice, a lot of support from all the different people in the group. And I still feel if that had not been a good experience for me, that first months or years in the group, we had a really good facilitator, which helped. She's still a friend today, that I wouldn't be, also, I may not be sitting here doing what I do today. I may have
Yeah.
done the caregiving and then just walked away.
Yep. And
And the way
that's
people are
true.
exhausted, I wouldn't blame them.
Yes, and that's true too. So what is the name of your support group, by the way? I don't know if we put your Facebook name out there for the support
So
group.
the Facebook group is Dementia Support Group for Caregivers with Bill Cohen.
Okay. And the support group, is the support group national?
Again, that's one that is international.
Okay.
With members everywhere. My Alzheimer's one is local, and again, that's in person, and it's in Southwest Portland. The other one, that nonprofit one, I actually have been doing it since we resumed in person, a hybrid where some people out of the area, like a lady from New Jersey, really likes my groups. She joins us by Zoom. So yeah.
Okay, great.
If people contact me and if they want those choices, I'd be happy to give them the information on how, when and where they are.
Yes, I will add I will add your link tree in my show notes if that's okay with you.
Excellent. Yes,
So that way
and if they're having trouble finding something in their own area, I can help them find it.
yeah, I'm sure you do have a lot of connections, which is great because well, Caregiver Chronicles actually has listeners all over the world now. But we do have listeners all over the country as well. And yeah, that would be great because I know people in Texas who listen to our show and, you know, in states where I don't really know anybody or I have limited resources. So that would be great. And I will absolutely link Bill's link tree in our show notes for this, you know, when this episode airs. I'll make sure that I prioritize having that on there because just what he's doing is super important. I know half of my audience is here to hear about dementia. The other half is here to hear about autism.
And of course, there's some common characteristics, of course.
Oh, there most certainly is. There's a lot of families that are affected by both. So, you know, there's a lot of families that are affected by both. And so it's just great to have the ability to have so much personal experience with both. What do you think the biggest problems and concerns are for caregivers right now?
Well, again, not feeling alone and not knowing, they may not know, again, where the resources are about support groups, about just that there's free adult placement people to help them find care communities. They get paid a referral fee and they can be very helpful. I do say, please don't use the national online companies. They don't do as good a job as your local professionals. I can usually find somebody in people's areas to help them with that. But of course, the finances is a big issue. It can be so draining, not just emotionally, but financially and energy, all those concerns. Because again, I've been there. I mean, mom ended up on Medicaid. In fact, it was right as she was having to go into memory care. Like I said, my stress level was sky high during that time period. I still don't know how I got through it. So, but again, the support group was very important. But don't hesitate to, one, seek advice, seek resources, go to a support group. So you don't have to do it alone. There is hope out there, because it's not going to get any easier.
Yes.
I think we all know that. That if you're trying to do it alone now and by yourself and doing it all at once, that's not going to work. You're going to burn out. And I know you've been in that position. Ask for help. There's a lot of places you get it: family, friends, neighbors, ex-co-workers, local charities and religious organizations, things like that. And I usually use the term, you have to basically go into triage mode, like the ER or the battlefield. This is the most important thing. I handle this right now. This will be next. Everything else will have to wait. And some of those lesser things are the kind of things you can ask other people to help you with. I love telling a little quick example. It's a lighthearted one of, it was the last couple of weeks when I was by mom's bedside. She was on hospice. We knew we were getting to the end. It was a norovirus quarantine, which unfortunately does happen. It's localized, but it's kind of coincidental considering we're going through a pandemic.
Yeah.
Is I got on social media. I said, can somebody please bring me a mocha latte? 2 different friends showed up from 2 different coffee places with the drinks for me. Sometimes all you need to do is ask. Don't be shy. People may not know how to help, right?
Yeah.
How can I help? How can I help? I don't know how to, just ask.
Yep.
Just ask. Most people will be very happy to help you out, even if it's a couple hours with your loved one, so you can get a break and go get a massage or go for coffee with a friend, that type of thing. It's very, very important. Can't be said enough about self-care, that it's not being selfish. You don't have to feel guilty about it. It's very, very important.
Yes.
Because you've probably seen or heard the statistics too. I don't know the exact number, but something like 2/3 of dementia caregivers predeceased the person living with dementia.
Yep.
That's alarming statistics.
Yes. Or a lot of times after their loved one passes, they begin to fail, physically and mentally as well. So yes, sadly, I have seen both circumstances, and yeah, and I believe it was Pat Moffat who was on, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was on a few months ago, and he told me when his wife got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's that her therapist said this disease often has 2 victims, the person with the diagnosis and the caregiver. And while early onset is horrible, Alzheimer's itself, dementia itself is just, it's horrible. It's stressful, and yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm going to ask my final question now,
Sure.
because I think we're getting close to wrap it up time. So where can my audience find you if they want more information?
Okay. You already offered to provide my Linktree, but the best overall, and as well as the Facebook group, would be Cohen Caregiving Support.com. That's COHEN Caregiving Support.com. And that has most of the information about my why I'm doing, how I work with people, how I get paid, and some of the other contact information. So that would be the best way.
Okay, great. And actually, I have one more question for you, and this one's almost for me. How did you become what training did you have to become a caregiving consultant?
That's a really good question, because right at the beginning, my main experience was the 10 years with my mom. And it is not regulated. It is not licensed. There is a certification, which I could have gotten. I ended up going the route of a CSA, Certified Senior Advisor, which provides a broad perspective, holistic approach, because it encompasses all the insurance and finances, the care about the dementia, et cetera. And because that is the approach I do, is coordinating everything and being holistic, not just taking care of one aspect of the journey. But I have also taken courses through the Alzheimer's Association, TIPA Snow, of course, kind of like the guru of dementia training, right? But I also have 2 business degrees, and I have a government background. So it gives me a well-rounded approach to handling all the different issues, not just hands-on care that caregivers need to be dealing with. And with the professionals that I collaborate with, I can speak their language.
Okay, great. That question for me, because I'm listening to what you're doing and I'm thinking about how this could be, while I'm like figuring out what I want to do with my life. At 35, I'm a failure. But
no. You've done more than most people have, like 55 or 65.
Yeah. So while I figure that out, I may as well ask the question, right?
Mhm.
But thank you. I'm not a failure. I've been put in a unique set of circumstances. I have to make adjustments to the routine and schedule and what I do. And, in the meantime, focus on my children, focus on my podcasting, because this has been therapeutic for me and this has helped people, which is just amazing that I have this platform as well.
It might be something where, besides whatever you end up doing professionally, I mean, I could see you being like an independent caregiver, setting your own hours, so that, because I heard you talk about needing flexibility. Obviously, you do. The other is maybe do a little bit of volunteer work, just couple or a few hours a month, like with the Alzheimer's Association. There's a great chapter in Connecticut, I know that, and probably Rhode Island as well. And it's a way of giving back, and it's a way of helping others, which I think would be rewarding to you. And it might lead to some answers on using your experience and your background as well,
Yeah.
because it's a valuable need. And I understand, because I know you were talking about, a lot of people are leaving the industry because it is so hard and it doesn't pay a lot. And all the care communities and the home care agencies are struggling for staff, and it is an issue. So if there's some way you can still do that without further burning out and be able to still take care of your family and yourself, I think there's a lot of options out there for you.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you so much for coming on this week's episode of Caregiver Chronicles. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. Is there anything else you want to let my audience know before we go, or anything?
I'd say that when it comes to dementia overall, and Alzheimer's in particular, if you haven't already, go to alz.org with the Alzheimer's Association. There's a lot of great information and resources on their website.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And that'll wrap up this week's episode of Caregiver Chronicles. Thank you all so much for listening. You can hear us on multiple platforms. We're available on some of the major ones would be Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and Audible and Amazon, along with many others. You can find our website with mywebpod.com. You can find us on social media at Caregiver Chronicles 2 on Instagram, Caregiver Chronicles on Facebook, Caregiver Chron 1 on Twitter, and you can reach out to us at caregiverchroniclespod@gmail.com, where we would love to, if you have any questions or any feedback on our episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening and have a great week. Bye.